Hi, and welcome to Epiphanies. I'm the Reverend Jessie Brandon, and I'm a life cycle celebrant as well as a metaphysical minister. And I get to have the opportunity of bringing my two loves together, books and people. So grab a cup of tea or coffee and settle into your cozy chair, and let's see where we go. Today my guest is Colette Mesdag, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her in a moment. But the book we're talking about that moved her life, created an epiphany, as it were, is The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity by Julia Cameron. And I'm just going to read you a little bit, actually from the introduction, because that really spoke to me. And she says, when people ask me what I do, I usually answer, I'm a writer-director, and I teach these creativity workshops. The last one always interests them. How can you teach creativity, they want to know. Defiance fights with curiosity on their faces. I can't, I tell them. I teach people to let themselves be creative. Oh, you mean we're all creative? Now disbelief and hope battles it out. Yes, you really believe that? So what do you do? This book is what I do. For a decade now, I've taught a spiritual workshop aimed at freeing people's creativity. I've taught artists and non-artists, painters and filmmakers, homemakers and lawyers. Anyone interested in living a more creatively through practicing an art. Even more broadly, anyone interested in practicing the art of creative living. I think that says a lot, and we're going to find out from Colette why that motivated her and created an epiphany. Hi, Colette, come on in.
Hey.
Hi, it's so good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Wonderful to see you too.
All right.
Thank
Hey,
you.
settle in.
Thank you.
And while I'm reading your bio, help yourself to some tea and just get comfortable here.
Excellent.
So Colette Mesdag is an intuitive guide and the creator of the Mystic Empowerment card series. Wait till you see these. They're just incredible. And she is dedicated to assisting those needing physical, emotional, and spiritual answers through images and words. She's the past curator of the Visibly Unseen Awareness exhibition for the David Busby Center, and that really was a fabulous exhibition. And how many years did you do that?
I think we did about 6 years.
Really?
So it
6
ran
years.
quite a while.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank
So,
you for the tea.
are you still working on your
I'm
tea
still
there? Okay. all
Trying to
right.
balance two things at once here.
Yeah, I hear you. Talk to me and make tea?
Yeah. It's like chewing
okay.
gum and walking.
Okay. So tell me, Colette, why this particular book?
Well, it came to me at a point in my life, and that was actually, quite honestly, nearly 20 years ago, when I was still struggling with the creativity that I was expressing through my business, which was photography. At the time, I had a wedding and portrait studio. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of this book was that it showed me that I wasn't fully expressing my creativity. So when I was doing the exercises, and it is a workbook, it's not a read cover-to-cover book, it's 12 weeks of intense exercise, insight, searching, digging up some things that are blocking you, and
there's homework, isn't there?
And there's homework.
Yeah.
And you know what, that suits me quite nicely. I like having any time I have to do any kind of growth and development, I like to have tasks, deadlines, having a schedule of some sort.
A structure there.
Exactly,
yeah.
and I find that works really, really well for me. So I enjoyed this book because of that. Mm-hmm. So it was an interesting process, and quite honestly, the first time I picked it up, the first few chapters I was okay with. The daily journaling was very difficult because I couldn't see myself as a writer at the time, and so journaling equated to writing and being an author, and I struggled with that, and yet the journaling was what uncovered a lot of the stuff that I needed to work through. So it was beautiful.
I can't wait till we can show them your cards and what you've created
From
and what's available.
that,
So,
yeah, I can't wait to share them.
Yeah.
But the beauty of the book, well, what actually started off as being just me sitting down and reading it and working through it by myself, evolved actually because after the first 3 or 4 chapters, I would find myself dropping the work, and because I was afraid or I wasn't being encouraged, you know, because my own self-doubt wasn't encouraging me, like my inner child was going, you can't do this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, or my inner critic, my inner child really wanted to play and create. And so the task came to be a bit too much for just myself, so I invited other people to join me. And this was the very first time I facilitated a 12-week program, in a sense, with the Artist Way to uncover and rediscover the inner artist.
Now, is that the one that you just did? No,
Oh gosh, no, this
you've
was
done
back
this before.
Yeah, this was oh my gosh, the first time I picked up this book, as I said, was I guess it was '99 when I did the very first group. Now, it was several years between the previous time and this current time that I just recently ran it again. And it's become something that I go back to. You know, every time I come to any kind of struggle or hurdle in my creativity or in my personal life, actually, it's really interesting because I know that we're all creative and we're all very much attached to that. And even if it's just in our thoughts, in the sense, you know, to be able to express ourselves more deeply. So every time I come to that hurdle, I go back to the book.
Back to the book. You know, I remember the first time somebody told me I was creative, and I said, I haven't got a creative bone in my body. And they said, you just designed and generaled and helped build a log cabin, and then you decorated it. That's creativity.
Sure
And
is.
it gave me a different perspective on what creativity was, because prior to that, my stick people were very sad little creatures. So I just didn't think I had a creative bone in my body. So this, of course, helps people not only to see that they have creativity, but expands on that picture and takes them further down the road of what they can do and how they can live creatively, as she says.
Absolutely, and it redefines what creativity is for a lot of people. And I know that sometimes it's just having the courage to express yourself, and whether that's using a pen or a camera or using clay, or if it's, you know, like whatever it is, it doesn't need to be a paintbrush. Sometimes,
and that's exactly what works for me as a life cycle celebrant, because of course I'm trained in celebrations and rituals, and and I did just create a ceremony for women, and that was very creative.
Absolutely.
And so that's, you know, that's what the book can do for you, is as I say, expand you out into, it's not just painting and writing and so forth. So how did it change your life?
well, as I said, at the time I was working through a lot of small problems, you know, like in the big world, some of these things up here are very, very small, but they had stacked up onto each other to the point where it was blocking me in the creative way. I wasn't expressing myself, and I was really feeling drained in the work that I was doing, in spite of the fact that I love doing weddings and portraits.
So you were already an established photographer,
Oh yes,
a
I had
wedding
my
photographer.
own business at the time.
Right.
Yeah, but I wasn't doing anything for me. I was doing everything for everybody else, and that was actually the case in my life as well. And one of the chapters in the book talks about you know, being sometimes, you know, like, what is selfish? Is it selfish, or is it self development? You know,
And self-care.
And self-care. And so this was a huge thing for me. It changed an aspect of my belief that I didn't deserve to do certain things because I needed to serve others first. And
I am woman, hear me serve.
yeah. and the fact is, the well was empty. You know, the creative well was empty. So how could I do more if I was, you know, sitting kind of blank? So this actually opened up a huge opportunity for me to express myself. Now, it started off, I was just photographing my kids dressed up as fairies.
Yeah.
And and it was just to do something fun for me. You know, I expressed my love of previous passions of science fiction, science fantasy, and so on, created costumes, dressed up my nieces, nephews, my kids, you know, their friends, and then it became, you know, I had this lovely series of images that became greeting cards that I enjoyed having so much. And then I shelved it, and I went through another blip in my life, I call it, you know,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until I revisited the Artist's Way on the 25th anniversary, the 25th anniversary edition came out, and I was able to revisit it again, and I went like, I need to evolve this a little bit more. So,
Well, I know that. I think how we first met was at a mini retreat that a local entrepreneur had, and you were doing fairy pictures, and I thought, fairy pictures? Well, I feel a little bit silly, but I think I'm going to do it, and I still have those pictures. So it was really cool. So you opened up a world for me too.
And that was, again, for me, it was just, I was still exploring where I was going to go with what I was doing as far as my imagery. So it wasn't actually fully evolved at that time when we first met. And it was more, I think, the second meeting that we had that I was already in the right direction, and I knew where this was taken. And it was a long journey because there's a chapter in the book that talks about detours and the things that we put in our way to not do the things we know we could be doing and want to do.
I have never experienced that.
Oh, yeah. Liar.
Yeah, okay. So then, obviously, I don't need to ask you if you recommended this book because you've been having, now how many workshops have you done with this? Just the 2?
No, I've actually now have 3 groups that have gone through the process with me.
Awesome.
And as I said, I facilitate now, but I still get something out of it every time.
Yeah,
And,
so you'd be willing or are going to do...
I have another one coming that's going to start in October and end just before the new year. So it'll be like an incredible end to 2017 for some people who are going through a shift.
Wow.
So it's kind of fun to...
Okay, put me down on the list
Okay.
because if I can work it in, I really want to do it this time.
that would be
It
fun.
didn't fit last time, but I think especially now that I'm able to do this show, it's another aspect of creativity, and I'd like to...
Excellent. Would be
like
fun.
to expand, as our friend Dana says, just keep expanding.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what is the, what message do you have for your community about this book? What do you want, what's the takeaway for them?
One of the things that most people struggle with is that inner critic, you know, and that voice that says, well, you know, that's not important, or that isn't going to fulfill you, or it's not going to make you money, so why are you doing it? And, you know, so that, you know, nagging voice. And I've always imagined this inner critic to be like the teacher with the ruler going like, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
This probably looks very elegant on TV. But, you know, you should be doing your work rather than playing and expressing yourself creatively.
Yeah.
And so this is the image that I have, as, you know, as far as the, you know, my previous inner critic. My inner critic is gentled a little, you know, softened a little bit now.
Yeah.
But I think we all have that energy inside us, or that voice inside us, whether it's core belief, whether it's a past patterning, or even fear that has come up because we've we've tried to express ourselves and somebody laughed at us or something. You know, like I was told when I was in grade 5, you'll never be an artist, you can't draw a straight line. And I believed that for a very, very long time, and it wasn't until, and I went to the camera because I figured I couldn't draw. Actually, I draw pretty good.
Yeah. I'm going to stop you there, and we're going to take a quick break, and I invite you to just go heat up your tea and come on back, because we're going to talk about our work next, and it's incredible.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, welcome back to Epiphanies. We're here with Colette Mesdag, and she is an incredible artist. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but first we're going to have some fun. Colette, what I want to know is, let me see, who do you most admire in life?
I knew you were going to ask me a tough question.
Yeah, narrow it down to one.
Yeah. Actually, I have to say that the people that, it's in a sense like the people that I admire the most are the people who are living their passion and their dreams. And that's any artist, that's anybody who has achieved a measure of success, because that's what I look at as, what motivates me, in the sense that, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. So.
Okay, so what does success mean to you then?
Oh, okay. Well, that's anything that lights your fire. That makes, that when you speak about it, you just start to shine. Like, people will just, you can see that they're just grasping onto something that's just so inner feeding, you know, and feels that well. So it's just so amazing to see. So there's so many, I couldn't even name a particular person, quite honestly.
Very politically adept, if you may dare.
My mother. No. Love my mom. She's always
she's a cutie. Yeah. Colette and I have had the pleasure of being friends for several years now, so I do know quite a bit about this lady.
Yeah, she's
so
awesome.
You know what I really want to know about you now, though,
Okay.
is I want to know about your business. Of course, I do know, but I want them to know. So describe for me exactly what your business is and how you believe it helps our community.
Well, I call myself an intuitive guide, and this is something that's evolved just very recently, because I've been a teacher, an artist, a photographer. I've done so many different things, and I tried calling myself a creative coach at one point, but it wasn't quite fitting. Like, sometimes that coat's just a little too tight or whatever. So it was too restrictive. So I started realizing that what I do with people is I intuitively can tap into where their energy blocks might be, and I use my words and my visuals to help unblock some of these triggers that are holding them back from expressing themselves more fully. And whether that's creativity, whether that's their job, whether that's in their career or in their relationship, that's what I do. And
So then I want to know, what do you use? I mean, I do know, but what do you use, and how do you use it to do that? What have you been creating all
she
these
keeps
years?
looking over here. She knows. She knows.
Because I know what she's got hidden.
Well, I created a series of decks that I call empowerment decks, and these images are my own creation. And I use the statement "I am" as a trigger. So my slogan is, empower yourself, empower yourself, rewrite your story, and claim your I am. That's the slogan for my business. And I find that this is actually a slogan for life, for myself and so many others around me. So this was the first deck that I created, and I called it Mystic Bliss, because at the time I was really deeply searching for my own bliss. So these cards and the images that evolved were a healing tool for me. Initially, it wasn't intended for anybody else. It was just something I was doing for me. And in a continuation of the journaling that I do through here, I would make a card and I would write about it. And then I would make another card and I would write about it. And it actually became the booklet that's the companion to these. And of course, as soon as I finished the first deck, because it felt complete, somebody says, when are you doing your second deck? And so technically that was completed a year ago, and now I'm currently working on the third deck. So it's a lot of photography, a lot of costume making, a lot of post-editing to add the magical components that I like, and then the writing, which was, again, a big surprise for me because it evolved so organically.
Yeah, like you said, you didn't think you were an author, and now here you are with 2 books under your belt and a couple more in the hopper, and then, of course, a third deck of cards, which will require a book as well. And I have to say that when I knew the second deck was coming and what the basis of it was, I begged her to perhaps, maybe, choose me to be in it. And I'm in. So tell me about the second deck. What's it called?
Well, the Mystic Bliss was the first one, and again, it was the searching for my own bliss. When I did the second deck, it was fully realized that it was, I fully realized that it was a healing deck, because it was a retrospective of the healing journey I went through in order to create the first deck, because I couldn't have done it without the healing that I went through. And it was, I also wanted it to be a feminine energy deck. So I have the categories that I understand through my own teachings and learnings, that there's the maiden, the mother, and the crone, but I did more research and found that there was a segment that had been sort of buried, which was the warrior. And the warrior is that stage we are in when we are passionate about something, when we are fiery, when we are fully engaged and you know, standing our ground. And there's a story that says that that was sort of pulled out of the sacred feminine, or the circle, based on, you know, control and the patriarchal society wishing to control that element, because it's very hard to control a very passionate woman. So,
This is true.
it's sort of reawakening the fuller feminine energy.
What I want you to just touch on for a minute, because I saw this on Facebook the other day, and it said maid, mother, crone, and the person who'd put it up said, how do you feel about that? And women were saying, I don't like it, it doesn't feel good. So I spoke to them and put on there about the warrior, because I wanted to open them up to the fact that there was
Another
that
element.
aspect of them. And so tell me what crone means to you, though, because that's, I told them what card I was. So.
Yes, and once again, with the crone, there's an awful lot of misconception as to what that means, but I believe that it means the keeper of the information, the wisdom, and the wise woman, the depth of things that, you know, that's so connected to earth, and the teacher.
Right.
As well.
I have a pair of earrings that I got in Albuquerque, and they're the Hopi Indians, and it's the grandmother with children all over her. And that's exactly why. She's not the babysitter, she's the teacher and the keeper of the stories. So, yeah, I think it's a very important role that we, you know, we eventually get to, and we can, in all its
revel
fullness,
in.
exactly, revel in it, so that we...
As opposed to feel that we are you know, set aside and rejected by society because we're now old and used up. We're not. We're actually more valuable in our cronehood than ever before, and it's really shifting.
Right, and I do like that. It is shifting. There's a lot of really interesting women in their 60s and 70s and 80s that we relegated to the pasture and shouldn't have, because my goodness, they've got things to teach
Don't
us.
they? Don't
Yeah,
they?
they really do. So tell me about the third deck that's in progress right now.
Third deck is called Men of Magic, or Mystic Men of Magic to be specific, and it is a also going to be 44 cards. I'm currently at 33, so it's evolving really, really quickly.
Yeah.
I'm estimating that it will be out in November, and I'm still writing for it, so I'm really putting some, you know, deadlines. As I said, I like deadlines.
Yeah,
I like
and especially
tasks.
since you're traveling to Belgium to be doing some work there too, aren't you?
Yes, I'm going to be doing some speaking there, as well as some photography for the last two cards, because of course, I've got some very favorite subjects that happen to live in Belgium, and we're going to go to England together and finish up the deck.
Canterbury and everything.
Yeah. So,
well, you're going to have to make a stop at the Clootie Well for me.
Clootie?
Yeah, Clootie, C-L-O-O-T-I-E. I think it's in Scotland, but it has
I'm not going that far.
Oh, darn. All right, well, we'll just have to go back then.
It's kind of like saying, somebody from Canada saying, or from Belgium saying, hey, when we come to Canada, can we go to Alberta?
True. Hey, do you know Bob from Toronto?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me more about the Men of Magic. So you have each time created a limited edition set, of which I am the proud owner of the first two, and I have my third set
Ordered,
for,
ordered, prepaid.
Waiting patiently.
And thank you, because it's people like you that help process this through, because if it wasn't for the funds coming through, I wouldn't be able to, you know, spend so much on costumes and so on, and evolve it. But the third deck is, there's 11 suits in a sense, whereas this one had no suits. This one had, the Mystic Journey had 4 suits, the Maiden, Warrior, Mother, and Crone. And I decided that I wanted archetypes, and male archetypes. And so I have the pirate and the sorcerer, the alchemists, the gypsies, and different elements thereof. And they each have a characteristic or personalities. As an example, the pirate, which comes up a lot, and I think it came up with you in a recent session, is about the adventure, is about riding the wave and having, not being afraid to face the storm because you know there's treasure beyond that at the end of that journey. So that's the pirate, and they all have themes, and they all have, you know, and I've had so much fun, of course. I'm kind of spoiled. I get to photograph handsome men in wonderful costumes.
Yeah,
so
you get to size them and create the costume.
that's right,
yeah.
Perfect. Hands-on.
Yeah, awesome. And speaking of the readings, that's one of the things that you do with these cards is you offer intuitive readings, and I have to say I had one with you the other day, and it was absolutely fabulous.
Thank you.
Really kick-started a new shift in me. So,
wonderful.
yeah, it was really great. I just want to say, for the moment, I invite you to contact me via email at jessie@jessiebrandon.ca and ask any questions about the book that we're talking about today or about Colette, any of the ideas that we've shared with you, and I'll be happy to answer those questions in future shows. And Colette, our time together is coming to an end, and I want to ask you a final question.
Sure.
What do you hope your legacy is in the future?
All the time that I was doing photography, from the time I was 11 years old till now, I always say that I believe in the magic of life, and I invite people through my imagery, you know, now and when I'm gone, to enjoy what I see.
Yeah, that is awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
what
you.
a wonderful legacy to have. Colette, I can't thank you enough for coming. It's really been enjoyable, and I always learn so much when I'm with you. And thanks to my viewers, I hope you've enjoyed Colette as much as I have, and hope to see you next time. Thanks so much for joining Epiphanies.